Well, I like making food that tastes good, and I don't even mind making food that tastes bad. But if I had to choose, I think I'd pick the former. So if you want to know how to make it a little bit better, but maybe not quite as good as it maybe could be, I think that you should listen to what I'm talking about. And if you learn a little something from this, well, I hope it served a purpose, and hey, that's what we're here for. Good, better. Nailed it. Woo! Hello, and welcome to the Cook Better podcast. My name is Corey, and I'm the host of this podcast, and today we're going to be talking about lasagna. And the reason we're going to be talking about lasagna is because it's something that I make every once in a while. It's a great dinner idea. In all honesty, it's not something that I make often. It's kind of one of those things that, you know, a few times a year, maybe 4 or 5 times a year, something like that. And but it's always good. And you know, I kind of make my mom's recipe for the most part. At least that's, you know, kind of the base. It depends. I don't know. My mom's lasagna is always better than my lasagna. But before I get into that, the idea for the episode, this episode about lasagna, came from a comment that I received from Mandy saying, do lasagna. So that's what we're going to do. But I also wanted to mention that I also got a comment from Jess, and she gave me a Brussels sprouts recipe that's really good. And it's very similar to the way that I would do it with the hot honey or whatever. But this has kind of a sauce. And the sauce has, I'm looking at it right now. I'm checking her email that she sent to me. And it's got maple syrup in it, honey and maple syrup. So it's got I'll make it quick. It's just, if you haven't listened to the Brussels sprouts episode, go listen to it. And this is the way, you know, I had never done it. I think I've maybe tried maple syrup one time, and it is good. But her recipe was to use just kind of a sauce to put on them after you've cooked them. And you have butter, chili powder, paprika, sea salt, red pepper flakes, maple syrup, and honey. So you've got that spice, you've got that sweet, and obviously that's a winning combination. That's what we want, or that's what I want, you know. Not always with the sweet, but, you know, with the Brussels sprouts, it just works so good. You got a little bitterness from the Brussels sprouts, and just a great recipe. So, and then, you know, that you can, with this recipe that Jess sent, you can do however you would normally cook them and kind of add that as a sauce. At least that's the way I would handle it. You know, if you pan sear them or roast them or whatever. So do with that. Thanks, Jess. Appreciate the comment or the email. And anybody else, too. I love to share your thoughts on what I'm talking about. So I have no problem going through some comments. That's great. And like I said, the topic for today is by somebody else asked for it. So Amanda asked for it. So great. I'd love to talk about lasagna. And, you know, I don't peek behind the curtain. I don't know if it's incredibly obvious or whatever, but I don't have a script here. I'm talking from memory, so sometimes I forget some stuff. But really, you know, it's kind of like, I think of it more like, you know, if I'm just talking to somebody, and there's like, what do you make for lasagna? You know, for today, what do you do for lasagna? And so I'm okay. This is kind of how I go through it, and I'm thinking of ideas. You know, I'm just talking through what I can remember of whatever. Now, it may be helpful to have a recipe in some cases, but I think a lot of what I'm going by here is just concepts, and maybe not concepts, techniques, and flavors, and just how do we combine them. I think there definitely, obviously, is a benefit to having a recipe in front of you. There's, you know, a consistency that you get when you're using a recipe, and it just is taking a lot of the guesswork out of it. Now, in all honesty, if I make lasagna, Temperature-wise, yeah, I'm going to need, I always glance at a recipe just to see, is it 375? Is it 350? Is it 425? I don't know. And I honestly don't know off the top of my head right now. But, the temperature is important to kind of get that right. That being said, I mean, 350 is a safe temperature. Might take you longer. I don't know. That might be an accurate number. But so there obviously is benefit to a recipe. You have consistency. You're not forgetting anything. That might be my issue. But I also kind of try to keep things, if I know I'm going to make something or whatever, I'll have it in the house anyway, and I'm going to add flavors. I know what flavors go with, certain things. But you run out of stuff sometimes, so something's going to get missed, and I don't want somebody to be discouraged that oh man, I don't have this ingredient. This recipe's not going to work. And perfect example, last night, I had said in the intro to this podcast that this kind of started by conversation with my family, brothers, sisters, mom, and stuff about food and what we make for dinner. And so we'll send each other ideas and pictures or whatever. And so my brother, my youngest brother, Luke, had sent recently was a cottage cheese bagel is what it's called. And it's, and he said everything bagel, and it was really good. Or he said it was really good and really easy to make. The easy part, is always, I guess, nice if something's easy, but I don't really care if it's easy or not. If it tastes good, I'll try the recipe, And it's kind of a viral thing that's been going around a little bit. And so I decided to try to make it literally last night, and I got to cooking it, and it's only got a few ingredients: all-purpose flour, baking powder, and cottage cheese, which is weird. And then you just mix those together and form them into the shape of a bagel and throw them in the oven at 375. I think it was for about 25 minutes or so, and you're done. Now, reality is this isn't a bagel, and I'm not huge on a bagel necessarily, but I do like the flavor of a good bagel, but I know that I haven't made them myself, but I do know that you boil a bagel, and this was not boiled. It's just in the oven. I think the only thing that differentiates it from as a bagel as opposed to a bun is the hole in the middle. Now, mine expanded and I didn't really get a hole in the middle, so it was more of a bun. And I'd made up some eggs, and I had an awesome ham, egg, and cheese breakfast sandwich for my breakfast this morning. And it did taste very good. But now, I don't know why I got started on that, but it was just something that tasted really good. Oh, I know why, because I didn't have an ingredient. I got all the way, I made the dough, I had the cottage cheese, I had the flour, I had the baking powder, and I mixed everything up, shaped it into my little bagel shape, and then I brushed everything with a beaten egg to make an egg wash, and I went to grab my everything bagel seasoning, and I did not have everything bagel seasoning. So what are you going to do? You're not going to throw it all in the trash. I'm sure it would have been a lot better with that everything bagel seasoning. And had I been thinking, I probably would have sprinkled some cheddar cheese on it or something to kind of make it similar to a cheese bagel. It's just a really dense bun, basically, is what you're cooking up here. But I didn't do that. I just did some flakes of I had some flake salt, so I sprinkled that on there. So it's just a very... really, it's not seasoned with anything other than the cottage cheese and a little bit of flake salt on top. It made a fantastic bagel, air quotes is what I'm doing, but it tastes really good. But I say that to say, don't fall into the trap when you've got a recipe of, I can't make this, I'm missing this one ingredient. Now, there are certain recipes, of course, where there is a key element. You can't make a cookie or a bread if you don't have any flour. Okay, true. Right? That's fine. But for certain things, you don't have it, make it anyway. So that's where I think that being held captive by I have to have a recipe is dangerous, and that's the beauty of cooking as opposed to baking. I enjoy baking. I've enjoyed it more and more as the years have gone on, because I often don't have that discipline of exact measurements, and sometimes you have to weigh things or whatever with baking. But with cooking especially, the precision isn't a requirement for most things that you're doing. It's a feel thing. It's a flavor thing. That's why we're tasting throughout. We have the opportunity to taste throughout with a lot of the stuff that we're cooking. So that's what we're doing. And so, yeah, I just say all that to say I don't have my lasagna recipe in front of me. But when I think of lasagna, I immediately know that, here's what I'm going to do. Okay? So one of the things that to me I will do if I can, and the time of year makes a difference, or what is I want to use, if I can, I want to make the sauce from myself, and I think that making your own sauce is a great thing to try, if nothing else. And I don't do it every time. I don't do it every time I make spaghetti. I'll buy a jarred sauce every once in a while. Actually, more often than not, I will use a jarred sauce. But it is good to make it once yourself and just from scratch, just to kind of see what goes into it and see how simple a tomato sauce can be and how easy it is to make. Now, it does involve time. The good news is that the time invested really is more in your initial prep. I mean, you maybe have 15 minutes, and then the real time comes in just letting that sauce simmer, and that could be 3-4 hours. Now, you can use canned tomatoes or you can use fresh tomatoes. If you were to do any YouTube searches on a sauce, I think it was a San Marzano, if I'm remembering correctly, is the real Italian tomatoes. People swear by it. You have to use these. People will use those over fresh tomatoes. I don't have that. I can't tell the difference, right? San Marzano, I did buy them one of the times I made the sauce just to try to see, is it a way better sauce? It tasted good. I don't even remember the other brands I bought that taste good. Fresh from the garden, I would say, is the best. If you can grow them yourself, Roma tomatoes is probably what you would normally use for a sauce, for spaghetti or a tomato sauce. But if you can grow them yourself, obviously that's better. And I would say, aside from growing them yourself, if you can support a local farmer who's growing stuff the right way and doing things the right way, that's my goal for this year. I'm in all honesty, I'm terrible at growing things. I try to grow stuff every year. I get excited in the spring. I'm gonna have tomatoes, and I'm gonna can them, and I'm gonna make this sauce and salsa and soup and out of my tomatoes, and I'm gonna jalapeno peppers, all this stuff. And I am apparently I'm just too lazy to properly garden, and I've over the years realized that. And this year, aside from my fruit trees and some corn, maybe a little bit of herbs that I'm going to do. Some people that might seem like a lot, but I'm not going to do the garden thing. I want to support the local people. I've got a buddy of mine who's got his own farm, and that's what he does. He sells produce at the market, and kind of that's a big part of his of the income for the farm is selling it. So, if you find a place or a person or a farm or whatever that you trust, that's not some that's a local place, buy that. I don't want to rely on Italy to get my tomatoes now. Again, I'm making it for my family, for my house, for me, maybe a couple friends every once in a while. Do I need to have Michelin star tomato sauce? No, but you can do. I think it'd be more important in my mind. It's, and I think there's a lot to be said to supporting local farmers as opposed to overseas. It's got to get shipped over, however it gets here, just so you can say, I got the San Marzano. I'd rather you said, I went to the local market and I bought my tomatoes from Enghetti Farms or whatever it might be, and you know, that to me is more awesome. You got it around here. You're supporting the local people. Okay, I think I've beaten a dead horse. Wherever you live, you know, there's markets all over the place, and maybe it's a little bit more. But honestly, like if you can do it, do it. If not, like I said, I've made pasta, lasagna or spaghetti or whatever using Aldi jarred sauce. So, you know, it all depends on what you can, you know, what you can afford, what you can do, how much time you have, whatever. But if we plan ahead, that's what I'm doing. I'm supporting local as much as I can. But so if you've never made your own sauce, tomato sauce, last episode I talked about a bechamel is one of the 5 mother sauces, and a tomato sauce is another of the 5 mother sauces. And obviously a tomato sauce, or should seem obvious, has got a base of tomato. It's a tomato, whatever. It's tomato sauce. So the simplest tomato sauce, and it blows my mind. The funny thing with really any cooking is when you start getting into high-end, not even high-end, you know, better cooking. The name of the podcast, we're going to say that. When you start to cook better, you recognize that even on videos on YouTube or whatever, all these things, it's almost like the less ingredients, the better something is for you, the better everybody says it tastes, and it all boils down to quality. So you get a good ripe tomato. Yes, you can get the San Marzano, whatever, in a can if you want to do that, and you put those in. Now, a pasta sauce really only has, you have your tomatoes, you have garlic, you maybe have onion, depending on what it is, you know, pizza sauce or a marinara or whatever. You might have some basil. With a pasta sauce, you know, for this type of thing, you'd be almost making more of a ragu, because you'd have some meat in there as well. I think technically that's a ragu. If you couldn't tell, I'm not Italian. So I'm sure there would be a lot of people that are going to have a lot of problems with some of the stuff I'm saying, but we're just going through how I do it. But if I'm making it from scratch, now when you take a tomato, the tomato's got skin on it. So to get that skin off, we're going to get water boiling. I'm going to get water boiling. And you drop the tomatoes in there after the water's boiling. You only need to do about 30 seconds. We're pretty much blanching the tomatoes. And that's what blanching is. You get boiling water and you put a broccoli or whatever, anything in there. It's in there for a short amount of time. You take it out and you put it in an ice bath to stop the cooking process. Now with the tomatoes, if you do that, you put them in an ice bath in a bowl with water and ice, the skin will split and then it's easy to peel off because we don't want the skin in our sauce. So I do that, then I take all the tomatoes, however many it might be, and just put them in a big pan. A lot of times I'll use my Dutch oven, and maybe I'll have a little bit of olive oil in there, but there's a lot of moisture in these tomatoes. You got rid of the skin, just throw them in whole. You know, maybe you can cut them up and chop them up, kind of dice them. You can throw them in whole, whatever. They're going to break down as they cook, so you can throw them in whole and maybe kind of mash them later or cut them up, however you want to do it, but get it in there. There's a lot of water in there, so they kind of start to stew. And then you might have to add a little bit of water. You can do whole cloves of garlic or maybe cut up and mince up some garlic and some onion. That might be something. I'm trying to think. You know, like I said, I don't have a recipe in front of me, so I'm thinking on the fly, but maybe that's something we do ahead of time. I guess if I'm making it, that is what I would do. I would put some olive oil in the pan, saute the garlic and the onion a little bit, and then put in the tomatoes. I can just hear it now, the sizzle as you're dropping these tomatoes in the sauce, and you know, and they're softening up now. And then you just let that simmer. Now you do it for like 3 or 4 hours. Maybe add a little bit of salt, maybe a little bit to season it to start. And then you can add some fresh basil or some oregano, depending on what flavors you want. an Italian seasoning in the little shaker thing. Do it fresh, do it dried herbs, whatever you have. You can think of the flavors that you would have. And it's kind of crazy to me. I don't know. I still don't understand the process, and I have looked it up before, but if you were to just do that and you put this sauce and get it hot, get the tomatoes hot, mash it up, it's starting to look like the sauce, but then you take a spoonful, it's very acidic. It's very sour in a sense. Acid kind of has a sour flavor, and tomatoes are very acidic. So you do that for like 10 minutes just until it gets hot. It's going to be kind of sour. You're not going to get a lot of the flavor from the basil or the garlic or the onion. It's just going to kind of be somewhere in the mixture, but not necessarily where you're going to taste it a whole lot. And it's just an amazing thing, though. If you let that simmer, you bring it up till it gets boiling. And you just put a little bit of water in there just to kind of thin out the sauce. Depending on if you have the lid on or not, once it starts to simmer, a lot of that moisture is going to evaporate. But tomatoes, as they cook and they simmer over the course of a few hours or 4 hours or whatever, they get sweet. The sauce gets sweet. You don't have to add any sugar to it. You can, if you want, maybe a couple tablespoons of table sugar or some brown sugar. I've heard of people using brown sugar, but you really don't need to. It's almost too much. It's amazing. Don't add any sugar to it. Simmer those tomatoes for 4 hours, and you're going to end up with a sweet sauce. It's magic. It's magic. It's really cool. And that's very simple, right? Obviously, we got onion, garlic, maybe a little olive oil, tomatoes, basil, maybe some oregano. We've hit like 5 or 6, maybe 5 or 6, and that depends on, and it's going to produce a sweet sauce. The scary thing that I don't like is if you go buy a jarred sauce from the grocery store, look at the back. See what's in the back. And the insane part, not only are you've got certain preservatives, whatever, the crazy and stuff I don't even know what it is, but you've got a crazy amount of added sugars, and they do that to sweeten it. And it's just like, oh man, you might as well drink a can of Mountain, or pour a can of Mountain Dew over your lasagna. It is. I mean, it's literally that much sugar that is, and I'm not perfect. Like I said, I drink Mountain Dew every once in a while, more than I should, or have a Monster or energy drink or whatever. But there are better options that don't have as much sugar. But it's just crazy to me that how much sugar is in most jarred salsas. Jarred sauce, pasta sauce, tomato sauce, when you literally don't need any, and it gets sweet. As it cooks, it just needs some cooking time, or to simmer and just mellow out. It's just crazy. So that's why I challenge you to make the sauce from scratch just one time, if nothing else, just to see how unnecessary all that added sugar is. Again, I've got jars of pasta sauce in my pantry that are store-bought ones, but there are sauces that come in a jar that don't have near as much sugar as others. But just look it up, to use that Yuka app like I talked about before, and just check, and you would be amazed at how many, and they give you a recommendation for one that doesn't have as much sugar or whatever chemical might be in them. Check it out. The ingredients in there are crazy. You would think, even you can tomatoes yourself if you've ever done a garden and had enough tomatoes to can. When you can, you just basically, it's like straight up tomatoes. Now that's not a ready pasta sauce, but it's not like you need to add all the sugar and all that stuff in order to be able to can it. So it's weird. Anyway, But like I said, I would make more of a ragu if I'm doing a lasagna. I want that meat in the sauce. Now, I personally would pre-cook my meat, use a ground. I would do beef, and I would do like a pound of beef or half and half beef and sausage, like Italian sausage. Something comes in Jimmy Dean sausage or whatever, or maybe you got sausage from somebody made for you. But I like the bite you get from a sausage and the flavors you get from a sausage. I also like the beef. So I would do half and half. Now somebody might do lamb. You could do lamb. Ground lamb would be great. Maybe ground lamb and sausage or whatever, or maybe all three of those things together. And I would just cook that up in a pan first. And then, once you get to a point, I personally would just mix it into my pasta sauce. Some people might not. They might just kind of have it as an additional layer when you're layering your lasagna. For me, I just dump it in and I'll ladle out the scoop all at once. So you've got your pasta sauce, maybe your jarred sauce of choice, or you've made it yourself. There's just so much you can tweak when you make it yourself that if I have the time, I prefer to do it that way. Doesn't happen every time. But take a 9x13 pan or whatever size pan you want to use, and you would put your sauce, do a base layer of sauce. Just because you got your pasta noodles, and if they don't have a liquid of any kind underneath them, you're going to get crunchy lasagna noodles on that bottom layer. So that sauce prevents that just like hard plasticky crunch of a pasta noodle that's been cooked and hasn't had the proper whatever, you know what I'm saying. So you do your pasta sauce first, and then layer a layer of noodles right over top of that pasta sauce. The pasta sauce is going to have the pasta itself, or the sauce itself, and the meat mixed in. Like I said, you've already got your meat mixed in. Or I already have my meat mixed in. So then I'll layer the noodles over. Now, I've used both kinds. I've done oven-ready pasta noodles or lasagna noodles, and I've done just regular lasagna noodles. There's the oven-ready ones tend to be thinner, I believe. At least that's what my experience is, and that's what kind of helps them cook through without needing to be partially cooked first. And it just depends. I don't know if the oven-ready ones are more expensive than the just regular lasagna noodles. Whatever way you want to do it. Use either one, but if you use the regular ones, you might have to boil the noodles first and kind of par cook them, even to al dente, and then start layering them in as partially cooked. And it just depends on what kind you want to buy. Use either one. I've done it both ways. That's fine. So you've got a layer of your sauce, then you've got noodle. Now, in the last episode, I talked about making a bechamel. And a lot of people will use a bechamel in a lasagna. Now, if I did it myself, I would have a bechamel and I would add Parmesan to that bechamel because the flavor of Parmesan obviously works fantastic with pasta. It just goes well with the tomato sauce and pasta and just Italian type food in general. Parmesan is a great cheese for that. The saltiness is there. So I would make a bechamel possibly and add Parmesan to that bechamel. Now, if you don't want to do the bechamel, then, and this is when I would put that layer on, for me personally, do a layer of sauce, noodle, bechamel, and then I would repeat that process. Now, I would also, after I did the bechamel, even if I have a Parmesan in it, I love cheese. I think I've said this before. Cheese is one of my weaknesses, one of my many weaknesses, in all honesty, but I would put some mozzarella over top of the bechamel in that layer. I like a lot of cheese, and I like just a lot of everything. And it depends how much you have. You could use whatever cheese you've got. Ideally, you'd have a mozzarella or maybe even a provolone. Don't buy the pre-shredded stuff, right? We're shredding it ourselves, but provolone or mozzarella is great. And another thing that I've done before too is just used cottage cheese, straight up cottage cheese. And I'll do that in there's like a manicotti or a stuffed shells. If I do that, I'll have the stuffed shells. I make more manicotti. I don't know if there's specific manicotti noodles, but they're, maybe it's like a lasagna noodle you just roll up. I don't know. I do the stuffed shells more, and there I'll make like a cottage cheese and spinach and Italian sausage mixture with a bunch of Parmesan and what have you, and I'll stuff those shells, and then I'll spoon pasta sauce over top of that. And I really like cottage cheese is kind of a mild flavor. There's a little texture there. Granted, it's kind of the same as all the other textures. It's just a mushy thing. It kind of blends in. But sometimes I'll use cottage cheese instead of going through making a bechamel. Just layer the cottage cheese and then do mozzarella or some provolone. And then you just repeat those steps. And if you don't want as much, like I said, if you don't want meat, you can make a vegetarian lasagna by just eliminating the meat altogether. And you've got your cheese and everything. I don't know. I'm sure there's a vegan option. I don't know. But, you can eliminate the meat fairly easy. And the nice thing is with the cheese and the pasta and the sauce and everything, you still get a hearty dish. And for me, I prefer having the meat in there. But maybe you don't have it that day and the lasagna sounds good. You got everything else. Do that. And then do as many layers as will fit in the pan. It's going to kind of simmer and boil and cook a little as it cooks a little bit. So, you don't want to go too crazy on it. That top layer for me, I'll do you got your sauce and then maybe a couple spoonfuls of the bechamel. Now, it doesn't have to, be a perfect even layer. You can kind of glob it on there. It kind of, as it cooks in the oven, it kind of blends together and melts. But on that top layer, I'll do the sauce, whatever I got left of the sauce, and then I'll do the bechamel. And again, like I said in the last episode, that bechamel will brown in the oven. But I'm also going to add, then I'm dumping the rest of the cheese that I have, doing my mozzarella, my provolone, also doing the Parmesan, getting that on there and using up the last bit of it, every last bit. And that is, kind of, and I think you believe whatever it is, 350, 375, 400, whatever it is, put it in the oven, and you're going to do it covered with some tin foil for the first little while. And then like the last 20 minutes or whatever it is, uncovered. Now, I have learned the hard way because I like to pack my pan full to the brim, I put a baking sheet underneath my 9x13 pan, which is typically what I'll use for our family, more than enough, but just to catch any overflow of sauces that bubbles up and just in case you might just get a burning smell in your oven from a little pasta sauce boiling over. But that's kind of my lasagna. I love I really like the addition of a bechamel or a cottage cheese. If you've never added that to your lasagna, I really encourage it. It just adds a creaminess and just something to the dish. Like I said, I don't know if that's traditional or authentic or whatever, but for me, that's what I'm going to add in there. Now, another thing that you can do, and if I have fresh basil, the one thing that I have actually been able to grow is herbs, and that might happen again this year, but if you can get some fresh basil, maybe get some of that on top too, or throw it on at the end and kind of have it. There's something about a fresh basil leaf, that just brings a brightness to it. And, lasagna, everybody loves lasagna, but it can be a heavy dish. And something about a fresh herb there will just give it some brightness. So maybe you cut your slices first, and then you throw, kind of tear up a couple, maybe chiffonade, another fancy word for just rolling up your basil leaves. and then you just kind of cut them on a slight bias, as you got basically a little cylinder the size of a pencil of all your big basil leaves rolled up, and you slice them, and that makes just thin strips of basil. Sprinkle that over the top, and that just adds just that finishing touch that's really good. And that's my lasagna. If I'm making it and you're coming over, that's what you're going to get. And you will have either a bechamel or a cottage cheese in there. So brace yourself if you're, I don't know. There's people out there that don't like cottage cheese. I'm not, I like everything. I never understood that one. It's a very mild flavor. It's got to be a texture thing, and I somewhat understand that. I don't know. But anyway, so that's what you do. And you eat a good lasagna, and you are never going to buy, I've had those frozen ones, and it makes me so sad every time. Any frozen, like packaged dinner, they always look so good on the box, so good. And then you open that box, and it's like, yeah, this is going to look nothing like the picture. It's a cold, frozen, hot mess inside that box. And I don't care where you get them from. It's all mush. There's no, it's just one pile of just the same flavor. And I've been so disappointed. It should be illegal to take pictures of, the pictures look so good, like a real lasagna or a real Salisbury steak or whatever. And the product that you get is just garbage. And there's a ton of extra garbage in a lot of those frozen dinners. But I think we need to push for, hold on, time out. I had to take a little drink. I think we need to push for, like, if you're going to be a company making frozen food, that's great. Sometimes it's cheap, whatever. Like I said, if that's your only option, I don't know why I can say that there's anything wrong with that, because if that's your only option, but a lot of us have the option. We start comparing cost and realize that, I don't know what those lasagnas cost anymore. I am going to look right now. Let's see. If I type in frozen lasagna, let's see just where I'm at. Lasagna. Let's see. I'm just curious, because I think if you were to really compare, so I'm looking at Stouffer's party-sized lasagna. You should see the picture I am looking at, because you want to talk about pretty. $16.48. Pasta noodles, lasagna noodles, I think you can get a box for under $2. You can get a big can of the San Marzano tomatoes for right around $3, $4 for a big can, I believe. And you have to buy maybe a pound of meat or whatever, and then you've got cheese. So the cost is probably fairly similar, but time is what we're investing here, and you're just getting so much better. But I started to say, and I really do believe, just to be in honesty, marketing is just all lies. You've probably seen some of the videos of where ice cream, when they do the commercials, isn't actually ice cream. It's like Play-Doh or mashed potatoes or something like that, so that it doesn't melt under the hot lights of the cameras or whatever. But this lasagna, I guarantee that's probably not real food. It's definitely not real steam that's on the box, because they didn't cook that from what came out of their box, I'll tell you that much. They need to you're going to make food and you're going to sell it to people. Honest marketing. Take a picture of what you actually have when you pull that lasagna out of the oven, and take that picture, and that's what goes on the front of the box. If you want your lasagna to look better and you want people to buy it, then make a better product. That's a little bit of my rant. I just think it's garbage, the stuff that we think we're getting. I mean, you go to McDonald's. We've all seen McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's commercials. The Big Mac looks like this majestic burger, And then we open up our stupid little box, and it's a smashed lettuce falling out everywhere. It's just terrible. Anyway, that's a bit of a tangent. I'm sorry. It's just, the stuff that we get sold in most cases isn't going to be very good for us. Prepackaged, processed food. And there is a process there. There's a process to making all food, but to be able to make it something you can buy at the grocery store. And it just frustrates me. It frustrates me that I fall victim to thinking that this is going to be some quality dinner for my family, and I open it up and it's slop, literal slop. All right, I'm done talking about that. Make it yourself. You can take some pictures all day long, and I do. I share them with my family. My family shares them with me. You make some beautiful stuff, and I can tell you what, I've never used Play-Doh to take pictures of something that I called ice cream. I guarantee you that much. I also don't spend 20 minutes trying to get the perfect photo. So, but the other thing that I think is essential when you get when you have lasagnas, you need some sort of garlic bread, right? In that you can do whatever you want. I've bought the frozen garlic bread stuff, whatever, in a pinch. It is what it is. I just am always disappointed by the amount of flavor in a lot of the frozen ones. They look like they're going to be so good and have so much flavor, and then you bite into them and it's like a piece of bread with maybe a hint of garlic on it, or Texas toast, the garlic stuff or whatever. So make it yourself if you can. If you can't, whatever. But if you can, make it yourself. And this is a recipe that my mom makes a lot, and it's something that I do anytime I make lasagna. For me, it's something that just goes with lasagna. And I believe I don't have it in front of me again, I'm sorry, but it's a French bread. That's your starting point. You got French bread, and then it's very simple. If you slice it, or you buy a pre-sliced loaf of French bread, make it yourself if you really want to get into it, or buy some that somebody's made of French bread. And you need Swiss cheese, and then you layer you butter the bread and you make like a butter mixture that's got boumande, I think is what it's called. I could be mispronouncing that, but it's a flavor that I have a very hard time describing. I don't know how to describe the flavor that you get from that. But there's that boumande in the butter and the poppy seeds, and there might be a little bit else in there. You can find recipes on Pinterest. I don't know what it's called exactly, but it just has just a really good flavor to it. And then you put the Swiss cheese on there, and that you put that in between the slices, and you wrap it in tin foil, put it in the oven for however long, and it's really, really good. And it just something you're not going to be disappointed in the flavor when you open it up, unlike a lot of the frozen stuff. And so, yeah, that's kind of where I think that a good garlic bread is just such a compliment to a pasta sauce of any kind that it's just like if it's not there, I'm missing it, And for me, I like throwing a little red pepper flake or something on top. I've talked before about not everybody wants that level of spice in their food, so I'll throw a little red pepper flake in at the end, and that's fine. We'll go with that. But yeah, I don't know. Let me know what you do for lasagna. I'm curious because to me, it's a very simple thing. You have a pasta sauce, you have a noodle, you might have a meat of some kind, and you've got cheese, and that's really it. It's a very simple thing. But again, just in the amount of time you want to spend making the individual parts of the lasagna, yeah, if you really want to go crazy, make the noodles yourself. I've never done that. I've made ravioli from scratch, noodles and everything, but never done lasagna. But yeah, let me know. Let me know what you do. I'm very curious to see if there's something I've been missing out on. But that's how I make lasagna. The Cook Better Podcast at gmail.com. Shoot me a comment, shoot me an email, leave a comment below, right below what you clicked on to play here, and I would love to share the comments. If you got something that's might help somebody else, like I said, I'll share the comment here. And anyway, thank you for listening, and go out and try to make some lasagna and some garlic bread. I'll talk to you the next time.